The debate for Niagara Falls.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm rising today to discuss the Niagara Escarpment. As I'm sure most of you realize, the Niagara Escarpment runs through my riding of Niagara Falls. It should come as no surprise that the escarpment is well known, not only in my riding, but across the country. In fact, the United Nations Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organizations named it as one of 16 World Biosphere Reserves located in Canada. We only have 5 other in this country at this time. The international community, on our federal and provincial communities, came together and committed to maintain the Niagara Escarpment and the land in its vicinity. They made sure that this area would stay a natural, environmental, and to ensure that development occurs on this land is compatible with the natural development of the area. The bill we're discussing today would affect the Niagara Escarpment Planning and Development Act, which was passed by Bill Davis government in the June 1993 or 73. The bill was designed to protect the escarpment, which is 725 kilometers of land stretching right up to the tip of the Bruce Peninsula. All the governments after that continued this plan until Mike Harris. The commission was almost dismantled under his watch. The budget was cut, and 1/3 of the staff was let go. The developers did well as they appointed to the board that was left behind. This board even tried to undo the international protection of the land. A lot of this was undone by Premier Ernie Eves, who replaced a number of the developers on the board. Though the Liberals were a bit more supportive, they also contributed to destroying part of the escarpment. It was under their watch that large developers like Highland Companies began to buy up escarpment properties with a plan to turn them into quarries, destroying everything around them and wrecking the land for future generations. Mr. Speaker, the Niagara Escarpment Commissioners voted to ask the province to end all aggregate extraction of the Niagara Escarpment. But this government hasn't been responsive and in the past, and there's no reason to believe they'll step up and defend the escarpment in the future. The bill we're here to discuss today was originally put forward as Bill 32 and then named after Mr. Bob Mackie. I didn't know Mr. Mackie personally, but I've been told he was a very good man who loved archery. The originally intent of Bill 32 was to allow for an archery ranges to be put on the escarpment land after a long battle between Mr. Mackie and the Niagara Escarpment Commission. So as you can see, there's a lot of history when it comes to the escarpment. Mr. Speaker, so what makes this protected land so important? The escarpment is home to forests, farms, recreational areas, some of the best scenic views in all of Canada, wetlands, rolling hills, beautiful waterfalls like Balls Falls, mineral resources, wildlife, historic sites, villages, towns, and cities. It's one of the best preserved areas of land we have in the entire province. An area that was set aside so our grandchildren and their grandchildren could appreciate the beauty of this great province and this beautiful country. I believe what the Niagara Escarpment offers to the world is something that benefits all in this great province. Mr. Speaker, around 40% of Ontario rare flowers are found in the escarpment, along with a number of rare birds and reptiles. Many of you here know it's home to Canada's longest and oldest footpath, the Bruce Trail. And I'm sure there's many of my colleagues here that probably been to the Bruce Trail. I am personally familiar with the trail. Not to date myself here, but I can remember walking the Bruce Trail as a kid, a long, long time ago. And this is important. When Mr. Bob Mackie Act, I guess it's the Bob Mackie Act, was originally introduced, it was to allow archery ranges on agricultural land. This is also important. But this bill is completely different from the bill, Mr. Speaker. In fact, this bill makes no sense at all. Instead of allowing for archery ranges on agricultural land in the escarpment, this bill would pave the way for a wholesale destruction of the area. Mr. Mackie was originally proposing that an archery range be allowed to run on his land. An archery range wouldn't have destroyed the land around his property. Now they're trying to attach his name to a bill that would replace the forests and the rivers with mega quarries, a bill that would see fragile environments be destroyed and replaced by whatever project developers feel would make the most money. Mr. Speaker, this is an area that no developer should get their hands on. There's lots of places in the province of Ontario developers can develop and make lots of money. This is not one of them. And it would be a great mistake if we allowed this to happen in this House. There's nothing in this bill that would protect this wonderful area. Actual reading what's in this bill, it repeals the Niagara Escarpment Planning and Development Act. Let me say this again. It repeals the entire act, which has protected the escarpment for almost 40 years. Mr. Speaker, for the profits of a few companies, we would destroy one of the province's most beautiful and historic tract of land. Why? And I say why to my colleagues. Why would anybody in Ontario, whether you're a Liberal, a Conservative, or an NDP, want to support destroying this? It makes no sense to me. All the skiing, the camping, the swimming, the fishing, the boating, the hiking, and the preservation would be gone. Gone. The intent is a lot worse than the intent of the original bill. Mr. Speaker, I know that in some areas affected by the escarpment, the landowners have had some issues from local conservation authorities. The conservation authorities have had some major problems, and there's definitely room to discuss their business. But at the end of the day, it benefits everyone in Ontario when we have authorities, commissioners, and boards and agencies out there protecting our natural environment. When these groups stand up for the land, we've done a good job of protecting it all these years. The generations before us fought for this land and protected it. We owe it to the generations that follow all of us, to make sure we do the same. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure where these changes in the bill come from. Quite frankly, nobody should take this seriously. The Liberals shouldn't be smug about this either. They've done very little to protect the escarpment. Mr. Speaker, what we do know is that this land contains some of the most beautiful and historic pieces of land, not only in this province, but the entire country. The entire country. That's why the international community designated the land the way they did. It benefits our tourist industry when people come all over the world to see it. It benefits our farmers who take advantage of the rich soil found on the escarpment. Simply put, right now, it benefits the people of Ontario. We've seen representatives stand up and fight against the quarry production in the past. We know that mega quarries will destroy everything past generations have worked so hard to protect. We also know that the damage would be permanent. Mr. Speaker, I can't see any reason why any Liberal, Conservative, NDP would ever take the escarpment away from our future generations, from our kids, our grandkids. They're the ones that will be losing out because of this bill. Let's put this proposal aside. Come up with ways we can work together to make sure the escarpment benefits everyone from Ontario, and it remains an important landmark for generations to come. Thank you very much, Speaker.